Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Vice Presidential Debate as part of the Iowa State Student Government Elections. My name is Ross Opie. I'm the Election Commissioner for Student Government.
And I'm Catherine Keeley, the Politics Editor of the Iowa State Daily.
We would like to thank both the Bryce J. and the Ludwig Ulrichs campaign, as well as the entire Election Commission and Iowa State Daily for their preparation leading up to tonight's event. The debate structure will be as follows. Each candidate will first have the opportunity to give an opening statement, followed by topical questions for both candidates to answer, and we will then go into specific questions for each candidate's platform. At that point, we'll take a 10-minute break, and when we resume, we'll be asking questions that have been submitted by the student body. For those watching at home, the link to submit your questions is on the Election Commission website under the Debates tab. Also, a QR code will be posted on the live stream during our 10-minute break, where you can submit your questions in a Google form. At the end of the debate, each candidate will have time to make a closing statement, and that will wrap up our event. We will now begin with opening statements. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to introduce themselves and tell the constituents why they want to be your next student body vice president, starting with Jaden Ulrichs.
Well, hello and good evening. I'd like to start off by thanking the Election Commission and the Iowa State Daily for hosting this debate, and I want to thank the student body for funding it. But my name is Jaden Ulrich, and I'm just a guy from small town Iowa who came to Iowa State University with a dream of someday fighting world hunger. I'm now a junior with the same goal, but I've gained a few more passions along the way. My second week here at Iowa State, I ran for Willow Hall president. I ended up losing that election, but I couldn't be more grateful. I ended up getting involved with the Inter-Residence Hall Association, where I ended up helping pass a resolution that brought high-speed internet to all the residence halls. I was then encouraged to be a cyclone aide, where I helped students enter the university during the COVID pandemic, making sure they felt comfortable and safe. Now, as an RA in Joffrey Hall and a residence hall senator in student government, I work to serve as a resource for the 7th floor Cavazos men and to foster community, as well as working towards bridging the gap between the residence halls and student government. Looking back at my time at Iowa State, I've always been there for incoming and residence hall students, and I believe it's my time to serve to empower all students at Iowa State through community, sustainability, diversity, equity, inclusion, and affordability. Thank you.
Jay, it's now your turn to give an opening statement.
I'd like to begin by thanking the Election Commission and everyone involved in planning the debate, but most importantly, I'd like to thank the student body for tuning in and participating in their government. I'm Jay Wagmeister, a sophomore from Rock Rapids, Iowa, double majoring in journalism and mass communication in the College of Liberal Arts and marketing in the Ivy College of Business. I currently serve students living off campus as a United Residents Off-Campus Senator. I sit on the Finance Committee where I help allocate your student fees to campus organizations and community nonprofits. I also sit on the ISU Police Department Student Advisory Board, where we meet monthly with Chief of Police Michael Newton to discuss issues relevant to students and policing here on campus. Off campus, I serve on the South Dakota chapter of the Huntington's Disease Society of America Board of Directors as the Youth and Advocacy Chair. The last week, Bryce and I have had the privilege of meeting with various organizations across campus to discuss our platform, Cultivate Community. If elected, we intend to cultivate a community of collaboration, togetherness, and opportunities for all cyclones. We have enjoyed hearing feedback from students and look forward to implementing their ideas into our work. Bryce and I are optimistic about the impact that we can make on Iowa State through our unique platform, commitment to our university, and dedication to students. I look forward to discussion tonight that focuses on current issues, our platform, and issues that the student body wants to address. Thank you.
Now starting with questions related to COVID-19. On January 14th, 2022, a group of students and university faculty and parents sent a letter to the Board of Regents urging the board to implement more robust COVID-19 response to protect vulnerable individuals and small children within these communities. Does your campaign share the same concerns as this group? If so, what would your campaign do to urge the Iowa Board of Regents to implement stricter COVID-19 measures? Jaden, you can start.
For sure. So obviously, the student wellness as a whole, but then thinking beyond the student body into the Ames community, where we have younger and older individuals in here on campus. That's a big concern. You know, safety comes before everything else. And if Ludwig and I were elected, we would continue to push for more vaccine places here on campus, as well as just making sure that everyone respects themselves as well as others.
The first step to that is just continuing to follow Cyclone Care's procedures. Additionally, I'd encourage any students or faculty that are not already vaccinated to attend the February 9th campus vaccination clinic here on campus. Vaccinations have proven to be what it takes to slow this pandemic down. And as of right now, I'm proud to say that 8,743 individuals have been vaccinated through Iowa State, and I would encourage all students to continue to get vaccinated if Bryce and I were elected.
On January 21st, 2021, the U.S. Department of Transportation announced a federal mask requirement for transit systems to mitigate the risk of COVID-19. Do you think SciRide ridership has changed due to this mandate? And if so, how would you address this problem, Jay?
I love SciRide. I ride SciRide every day. I wear my mask on SciRide every day. It'd be hard for me to compare that without talking to SciRide, as riding the buses last year were different considering the amount of in-person versus virtual classes. I would say that my bus every day is pretty full when we get to campus. In order to increase ridership, I mean, beyond that, I would encourage students to continue to wear masks.
Jaden?
For sure, and so I also share a love for SciRide, and Jacob could speak even more to his love for SciRide. But obviously, ridership probably has changed just because of that requirement. I know from Joffrey Hall's standpoint, when working at the hall desk, we supply masks because we have a bus stop right outside of our building, and so we supply masks to students so they can grab that right before they get on the bus. But I think one solution to that could just be having kind of a stock on SciRide of masks when they get on. Just because masks aren't required, you know, they are encouraged everywhere, but where they are required, we should have them available so students can still abide by that, but to continue riding SciRide.
According to the CDC, the Omicron variant likely spreads more easily than the original COVID-19 virus. At ISU, approximately 8,700 students were vaccinated on campus. What are your thoughts regarding vaccine promotion, and how would your administration promote the COVID-19 vaccination among ISU community? Jaden?
For sure. So obviously COVID's nothing new. It's been around for 2 years now, and the only way to slow that that's been proven is through increased vaccination. I have both of my vaccination shots, and just increasing vaccine clinics here on campus, and just really making sure that it's beyond yourself, really. You know, getting the vaccine is great because you're not only protecting yourself from others, but then you can protect others, you know, potentially from you if you were just a carrier.
Jay?
Yeah, I suppose I already touched on that anyway. The vaccination clinic coming up, I'll share that I'm vaccinated with a booster as well. And in order to promote that, I say just leading by example. I mean, I wear my I'm vaccinated button on my backpack and just encouraging other students to do the same as well.
All right, we'll now move into the topic of student government and Senate retention. Many members in student government report a disconnect between the organization and the student body. If you are elected, how will you ensure that the Senate and its members will be active within their constituencies and represent them diligently? Jay.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm most excited to talk about is if I was elected vice president, one of my biggest, I guess it's a smaller goal, but something I'm excited to do is I'd be the chair of the Senate, and I'd be happy to have a QR code or some sort of agenda at the door when a student walks in and they feel more welcome when they walk in as a guest. And as far as retaining people that are already seated, I think as the chair of the Senate, it's important that you encourage them to interact and reach out to their constituency bases.
Jaden.
For sure, and so I honestly think that's obviously a huge point of student government in our outreach programs is we are supposed to represent the student body as a whole, and I think currently the student government outreach plan is just to tell people, you know, we meet here 6:30 6 every night here in the Campanile room Wednesday nights. That's what we do. Go follow our Instagram. But it's time for student government and our members to really make sure that we step out into the community. We start going to those club events because student government's not the only organization with power. We're not the only route to change here on campus. There's so many other organizations, and we need to start going out to them.
Both campaigns have stated they want to be a leader and represent all students at ISU. Students have the most direct engagement with student government during the 2-day student government election period. However, only 15% of the total student population votes. With the public largely uninformed about the missions and responsibilities of student government, how do you promote awareness of student government's role and encourage student engagement? Jaden.
Yeah, so our campaign's been tabling out in front of the library for the past couple days, and that's honestly one of the big things we hear is, what's student government? Like, I've never heard of you, what do you do? And so that's obviously, you know, right there on the forefront, we're hearing that problem. And like I said, just really making sure that we're getting out there. Student government, we fund a lot of different things that a lot of people might not know about through the legal services here on campus, student counseling, and just a plethora of other things that we have our name kind of on the backside. But even if we just started putting that out there a little more, that $44 is a semester is going out there to students, and I just need to believe that we need to make sure they know that's where it's going.
Jay?
Anyone that's familiar with student government or its workings will tell you how many times they've heard that we need to increase outreach, increase outreach, increase outreach. And I think the basis of Bryce and I's campaign is that him and I intend to lead by example and continue to outreach to the campus. With Bryce's position as director of marketing, I think he has plenty of experience doing that. And I think there's nothing more important than leading by example as president and vice president to continue to outreach. And then being the chair of the Senate to encourage all people within the legislative branch anyway to continue their outreach, complete their outreach credits, and do whatever it takes to make sure that students are aware of the great work that student government does.
Any student who wants to be involved in student government, but not necessarily as a senator, has the opportunity to apply to Senate committees, executive cabinet, the election commission, and the judiciary. What actions will you take to promote and fill these important positions? Jaden.
For sure. So Jacob and I, one of our big things, especially in diversity, equity, inclusion, is we want to be intentional. We've heard from the student body that they don't feel reached out to, they don't feel welcome to student government, and so we really want to be intentional with reaching out to them and inviting them to our cabinet meetings, to our Senate meetings, so we can hear from them, but then we can also tell them about those committee spots. On the ISU police board, advisory board, you know, Chief Newton's been wanting diverse representation and voices on that board, but he hasn't been able to get that in a couple years. And so we really want to make sure to be intentional, let them know, so then they could take up those seats.
Jay.
Yeah, I'll use this as an opportunity right now. If you're out there watching this, listening to this, and you think there's a position in student government that you would fit well, I encourage you to apply for it, whether it's a cabinet position at large for a committee. I'm sure regardless of whoever wins this election, we'd be happy to have a lot of applicants to the cabinet positions. And beyond that, I think that the way that a large misconception of student government is that it's only elected positions. They see this debate, they see the Senate races, that it's only elected positions, and I just want students to know that there are a lot of positions in student government that are at-larges on committees. There's Supreme Court, so many of them are nomination-based and application-based they don't rely on the entire student body to elect them.
As a follow-up question, how do you plan to promote the student government allocation of funding for student organizations across campus? Jaden.
For sure. So I think we do a good job already, but there's obviously improvement with reaching out to treasurers of clubs and making sure that they are aware during our allocations and annuals time. And that's coming up here soon. But then also knowing that beyond that, they can come back to student government if they have an event they didn't plan for, or they're going to a national competition. They can come back and ask for additional funding. Just really being known about that and letting them know.
Jay?
Could you repeat the question?
How do you plan to promote the student government allocation of funding for student organizations across campus?
Thank you for that question. I'm a senator that sits on finance committee, so I'm happy to share the word of students applying to receive funding through student government. A basis on Bryce and I's platform is to increase outreach to organizations and specifically multicultural organizations. So when Bryce and I are doing that once every other week or once a month meeting with multicultural organizations or anytime I run into an organization across campus, I'll be happy to encourage them to apply for funding if they are funding eligible.
What does your vision of an effective and efficient student government look like, and how will you work to create and maintain this vision of student government? Jaden.
So as we know, if elected vice president, I would chair the Senate meetings. And that's kind of the face of Senate every meeting. You know, we start and end every meeting. And so I would really want to make sure that I could connect with each senator there, you know, because they each have an aspiration that brought them to that Senate meeting, and each of them bring a different view to that Senate meeting of different ways that we could change campus for the betterment. And so I'd really want to make sure that I bond with each of them and am able to connect. So, you know, if they have a great idea, I could be that little catalyst and really help them out, form the connections they need, and so they can continue and have that idea out there. That's what I believe is the most effective use of Senate, is really making sure that each senator is being utilized and is doing as much as they want.
Jay?
Yeah, my ultimate goal, my ultimate dream of the community that I want to cultivate is to have an entire student body that whenever they have an issue, whenever they say, oh shoot, you know, I wish something on campus operated differently, they know that they have an organization that will advocate on their behalf. I want every student to know that they have senators representing them, they have committees that represent their interests, they have somewhere to go that advocates for them on behalf of them towards university administration, to the state legislature, and even to the federal level.
And as a follow-up question, the Vice President chairs the weekly Senate meetings. How do you plan to be an effective mediator in your role? Starting with Jay.
Yeah, so I touched on that a little bit, talking about having a QR code, a handout, or whatever, so that when someone walks into the Campanile room at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday, they know what's going on, they feel welcome, they know that they can participate. Could you repeat that question?
The Vice President chairs the weekly Senate meetings. How do you plan to be an effective mediator in your role?
Yeah, just continuing communication, keeping constant contact, checking in on the Senate office, and just making sure that senators are in touch with what's going on, and maybe if a senator's missed a meeting or two, you touch base with them and make sure that everything's going all right so that they can best serve their constituency.
Jaden?
Could you repeat that question one more time?
The Vice President chairs the weekly Senate meetings. How do you plan to be an effective mediator in your role?
For sure. So when we are chairing those meetings, obviously a big thing of our meetings is parliamentary procedure. I've been an FFA since my freshman year of high school. I'm well-versed in parliamentary procedure. We practiced it in IRHA as well. And so really making sure and maintaining that order is kept within the Senate room, because order in the Senate room will promote respectfulness and professionalism amongst all of us.
The student government budget for the 2021-2022 school year accounted for $2.6 million and comes directly from student activity fees, a fee that every student pays as part of their U-bill. With declining enrollment rates, how do you plan to address a smaller budget? Jaden.
For sure. So obviously, enrollment is declining, and with that becomes that lower student fee intake at the student government level. And so I don't think there's any room to cut any funding to anywhere. We need to make sure that we are at an equal playing field for everyone. And then when the need arises, going out, are there other options for funding? We can obviously work with partners in the university like the ISU Foundation, and then working with the university on other matters as well.
Jay.
Yeah, so just a couple hours ago, I was sitting in a finance committee meeting with Finance Director Mason Zastro, and we were talking about this topic. A lot of the funding that student government gives out is fixed based on contracts, so it's hard to alter those numbers, and who feels the biggest effect of that is the student organizations. And I still want to encourage student organizations to apply for funding And budget cuts will have to be made if the budget's not there.
As a quick follow-up, a lot of students don't know that stugov has $2 million in funding every year, and they're surprised to hear that it's that much. In general, do you think that student government spends this money wisely? Jay?
I'm in on a lot of those decisions. I'm in Finance Committee, I sit on Senate, and I vote in favor of those. So I guess looking at my Senate record, I suppose I approve of the ones I voted yes on and disapprove of the ones I voted no on.
Jaden, same question to you.
For sure. So as a senator, we obviously, a lot of the allocations money gets brought before us, and Senate has to approve of that. And we always do a very good job of vetting those funding bills, making sure that it is a good use of our money. And you know, as a collective body, as a Senate, we either vote yes or we either vote no.
Now on to campus climate and student wellness. In 2021, there were at least 15 reported sexual assaults on ISU campus. What resources exist to assist sexual assault survivors, and are the current resources sufficient? Jaden.
For sure, and I'm really happy you asked this question. One of our big platform points is combating sexual assault on and off campus. And so there's obviously Green Dot on campus, which is severely underfunded. Currently, 1/2 of one full-time employee works with Green Dot. Comparatively, the University of Iowa has 3 full-time members working on sexual assault prevention. And so obviously there's a lot of room for improvement there here at Iowa State. We also have our third-party member access, especially for those off-campus people and survivors. But then, you know, as an RA in the residence halls, we do have a firm grasp on the response side of things, but once again, the prevention side is really lacking. We need to work towards that. One idea we're proposing is distributing RA bulletin board ideas so we can have that information up because, you know, we have 8,000 students that walk to the elevator in all the residence halls every day, and if they can pass by that information, that'd be wonderful.
Jay.
Yeah, I'll certainly echo what Jaden said. If Bryce and I are elected, we intend to really advocate for the Green Dot program. We look to increase the faculty and staff support for it. And it's unfortunate the amount of sexual assaults that occur on campus. And I know a lot of students are concerned that the numbers are up this year. And I'm in on a lot of those we meet with ISU Police Department and they discuss the numbers regarding sexual assault. And more people are coming forward to report them, which we're thankful for. That's another step in the right direction of combating sexual violence.
And as a follow-up, what additional resources could be created to assist sexual assault survivors? Starting with Jaden.
For sure. So as I mentioned, we have the RA bulletin board idea. Even just having an informational flyer on the backside of stalls, you know, you can captivate someone's attention, you know, from 3 to 5 minutes during their business. But then also trying to implement ideas of sexual assault education at the destination Iowa State or the orientation level. There's even a bill currently in the Iowa legislature, fingers crossed it gets passed, that would do sexual assault awareness and education at the high school level. So those students coming in will be aware of that because majority of our sexual assaults that do happen on campus happen within the first 6 weeks of the semester. And so if we can educate them before they even get here, that would be even better.
Jay?
Yeah, Jaden really hit that right where I was going for it. Destination Iowa State, freshman orientation, and education in high school to really combat the initial instances on campus, like Jaden said, within the first 6 weeks. And at the university level, we'll certainly do what we can to prevent it, but it's apparent that educating people early on is the way to go.
According to Thielen Student Health Center, in 2021, student hospitalizations related to mental health increased 233% compared to the previous year. Considering this dramatic increase, how do you plan to address this issue? Jay?
Yeah, the pandemic's been tough on mental health. 1 in 10 students report not knowing where to go for help. And I think just really pushing the resources that we have on campus and really advocating to increase student counseling services and having more resources for students when they need them. Because while the numbers are up for people that are experiencing it, there's a lot of people that haven't reported it either. So Bryce and I would certainly advocate for the expansion of programs regarding mental health.
Jaden?
For sure, and so even if you are one of those 1 in 10 people that know where to get help, currently at the on-campus and in the Ames community, our mental health resources currently have a 5-month wait, and that's obviously way too long. And so a big platform point that Jacob and I have been stressing is to continue lobbying and show our support for telehealth at the state legislature, because if we can start working across state lines and utilize telehealth from other licensed psychiatric places, that could really blow up the amount of, or increase the amount of mental health resources we have and really provide help for our more students here on campus.
Yeah, following up on that, currently students are only provided 1 free semester of counseling-related services. Do you think this adequately addresses the current need for student mental health support? Jaden?
Obviously not. If that number is as high as it is and they're going to the hospitals, it's obviously not. And obviously with that, there's a lot of funding options we could do with increasing what student counseling services can handle, with increasing their staff, working with the Ames community, but then again, really pushing at that state level, and then setting a priority as a Big 12 conference when we go to Big 12 on the Hill, and at that federal level, really making sure that if we can start working across state lines, those that limited service can be expanded once we recommend into the community.
Jay?
Yeah, Bryce and I would certainly advocate for expanding mental health resources, whether that be us talking to university administration, talking with legislative ambassadors who focus at the state legislature, talking about funding for mental health and stuff like that.
There are a total of 6 ISU principles of community. Can you name one and describe why it is important, and do you believe that ISU students are striving to meet this principle? Jay?
I believe one's community of involvement, and I think it's really important that students are involved. I think that's the basis of our platform, is cultivating community, and just making sure that people not only feel welcome, but feel encouraged to be involved in what's going on campus.
Jaden?
For sure. So the 6 principles of community here at Iowa State are respect, purpose, cooperation, richness of diversity, freedom of discrimination, and the honest and respectful expression of ideas. And that last one, the honest and respectful expression of ideas, is one that I try to embody and really think is important for the Iowa State community. We obviously have students from all around the world, and with that we have different identities and different perspectives and different personal experiences. And those experiences and identities that they can bring forward, whether it's at a Senate meeting or just in general, is really what makes Iowa State rich as a university and what points us in the right direction.
The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees freedom of speech. Disputes pertaining to First Amendment rights have been a common topic of discussion here on our campus. How do you balance the rights protected in the First Amendment, such as freedom of speech, while developing a positive campus climate? Jay?
Yeah, thanks for that question. That encapsulates our entire campaign, cultivating a community where people feel welcome to express themselves, but also developing a community where people feel discouraged to spread hate speech or to treat others with disrespect. I think that the community that Bryce and I dream of is a community where people feel free to speak, but what they're going to be speaking isn't anything that degrades any certain identity.
Jaden?
For sure. And so the First Amendment's an amazing thing, and it gives me rights, but it also gives all of you rights. To free speech especially. And it really boils down to that respect aspect of I'm going to voice my opinion, but I'm going to listen in a respectful manner to your opinion. One of the big platform points Jacob and I are pushing is to have a civically engaged campus, particularly around the First Amendment and free speech. There's the new First Amendment and free speech training that was put out by the Board of Regents. Jacob and I really want to push for that education and maybe incentivize that education just so everyone knows their rights and how to respect those of others.
Now onto the topic of diversity. There have been frequent debates surrounding the use of preferred gender pronouns. What should Iowa State students know about using preferred gender pronouns, and should ISU encourage its students to use them? Jay.
I think that where a lot of people get tripped up on pronouns is people that assume they know their own pronouns don't go for sharing theirs. And I think the reality is sharing your pronouns encourages people that may not have your assumed pronouns feel more welcome to share theirs. And I certainly have no issue with the university encouraging people to use their preferred pronouns.
Jaden?
For sure, and so I share the same view. It's really about inclusivity and respecting the individual. My pronouns are he, him, his. You know, a lot of people might assume that, but for another individual that might look this similar to me, you know, they might use they, them, and if that's their preference, we need to respect that, and so I would, you know, continue to support the university for encouraging the pronouns.
The Iowa State Faculty Senate has begun revising the Iowa State diversity credit requirement. The Faculty Senate approved a proposal that requires students meet 3 out of the 4 learning objectives as opposed to completing all 4 diversity standards. What impact does this have on the student experience? Jaden.
For sure, so they obviously wanted to expand to those 4 points for a reason, to go for a more diverse education and really an awareness here for every student that comes to Iowa State. But now since we are doing the 3 out of the 4, it could impact students. We obviously are still getting a diverse education, or diversity education, but it just won't be as thorough.
Jay.
One of the things I'm most thankful for about my Iowa State education is the amount of diverse thoughts and beliefs and identities that I've experienced here, and I'm very grateful to have received that in my education. I can't personally say that I'm super versed on that recent decision, but all I can say is I'm thankful for the diversity that I've experienced and learned here at Iowa State.
According to data from the Office of Institutional Research, ISU is considered a predominantly white institution with over 72.6% of students identifying exclusively as white. What current efforts are taking place to increase diversity among the student population, and what additional initiatives should the university take to increase diversity among the student population? Jaden.
And so it is February, it is Black History Month. I just want to put that out there. Our campaign has been trying to really make sure that we are aware of that and go to those events as well, so we can learn more about the Black community here at Iowa State and see how we can support them. But obviously that diversity is what makes Iowa State so rich, you know. It brings those additional ideas and different aspects of life to attention. And then, yes, I just support the university continuing to push for more education and for more exposure of that.
Jay?
Within a student government level, Bryce and I intend to encourage international student involvement. In meetings with university administration, we would also advocate for increasing a more diverse student population.
All right, we will now move into the section of candidate-specific questions. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer. Starting with Jaden. Iowa State University's religious accommodation policy states that instructors are to review student requests in an effort to provide a reasonable accommodation without fundamentally altering a course. Your platform discusses promoting greater awareness and accommodations for students during their religious holidays. What are the current issues with the religious accommodations policy, and what plans do you have to address them?
For sure. So, like I said before, Iowa State has students from all around the world, and with that becomes different cultures, different religions, and different belief systems. To put it into perspective, you know, if you're a Christian, if we had school on Christmas or around that time, there'd be a lot of upset people. But I know even last year in student government, there was a lot of concern with our Muslim students in night exams with Ramadan. And, you know, that's just not fair for them. They have their own beliefs, and we need to respect that. And so how we would want to approach that is to really collect a diverse celebrational calendar and provide that to our professors, and so they can just try to, from the get-go, schedule around that, so it's just not even a problem.
This question's for Jay. According to data reported by the Iowa State Daily, only 12.9% of students know who represents them in student government. How does your campaign plan on engaging with new and current students?
Yeah, like I said, encouraging students to know that student and government exists even when they step foot on campus is important. We have a presence at Destination Iowa State, but we want to increase that presence. Maybe tabling to dining centers where there's a lot of freshmen in those areas. But ultimately, Bryce and I intend to lead by example and outreach to students ourselves, and just know that if the student body president and vice president care about them being involved, then they should know that the rest of student government cares about them being involved as well, as Bryce and I intend to have as many voices as possible in the room when student government's making decisions.
And now back to Jaden. According to ISU Dining, 300 tons of food waste are diverted into compost each year, and your campaign proposes to establish a composting program in the last remaining dining center and expand drop site locations to engage more students within the program. Can you elaborate on your plans to increase composting on campus, as well as could you explain why students should care about composting and why it's important?
For sure. So I'm so happy you asked about this question. I'm in global resource systems, and a lot of that is about sustainable agriculture and really making sure, composting is a big part of that. We can take our food waste, incorporate it right back in to the landscape as organic matter, which is amazing from that point of view. But for the on-campus, I'm currently Friley Windows, the Hub, the Roastery location, and the MU are currently the 3 dining locations that currently don't compost. And so we've sat down with Director of Dining Muhammad Ali and his team and really started working on why we haven't already incorporated composting at those sites. And it's just a couple hurdles we have to get over. The biggest being there's no location for a dumpster. And so it's just a lot of those logistics. But you should care about composting because we have a composting site, the ISU composting facility. It's an industrial composting site. And everything that gets brought there eventually comes back into the landscaping.
Back to Jay. Increasing scholarship opportunities in higher education is one of your campaign platform points. How do you plan to accomplish this with less funding from the state in the coming fiscal year?
A lot of that comes through lobbying and just really working with our Director of Affordability to advocate for those scholarships. It's hard to know the logistics now, but certainly we would like to see more Iowa State students pursue graduate school, and that's just one of the ways that we intend to drive that platform point.
And as a follow-up, Jay, who would be eligible to receive these potential scholarships?
Iowa State students that intend to pursue a graduate degree, and beyond that, the best applicant.
Back to Jaden. Data from the 2019 National College Health Association reported that 24% of Iowa State students are food insecure. How would you expand existing programs such as Give a Swipe, SHOP, and the promotion of SNAP benefits?
For sure, and so there's 24% of campus is currently food insecure, and that's up 8% from last year according to that survey. And so we really think it's important. There actually is, we found out mid-campaign that there actually already is a food security task force on campus that involves SHOP and our ISU dietitian. We found that out during our conversation with Director of Wellness, Brian Vanderhayden. And so we really want to start working with them. And with the Give a Swipe example, I don't know if my numbers are correct, but there's about 200 swipes that are currently sitting in the Give a Swipe program. And it's really just about how do we distribute those meals without outing those students, because no one wants to be seen as food insecure. And so we really need to develop a program where those students can access that food and the swipes they need without having to be publicly known as food insecure.
Back to Jay. Data collected from the 2018 Campus Climate Survey showed that over 7,000 students, or 9.9% of Iowa State students, identify as part of the LGBTQIA+ community. How would you define allyship, and how do you plan to expand on LGBTQIA+ resources?
Luckily, Bryce and I are readily equipped to handle that. How would I define allyship? I define it as just being welcoming and advocating for the LGBTQIA+ community when they're not in the room, and working with the center to see in what way student government can help expand those resources.
All right, we are now going to take a 10-minute intermission where we will collect questions from the audience. To submit questions, you can scan the QR code that will be posted on the screen during our break. That QR code will take you to a Google form where you can write questions to individual candidates or both candidates. And you can also access the Google form on the Election Commission website under the Debates tab. And when we return, we will be asking the candidates questions that have been submitted by the student body. For those that are still in the room, everyone received an email this morning with a link to the Google form if you'd rather.
So
Yeah, I will direct you.
right, welcome back, everyone. We will now start asking questions that have been submitted by the student body. As you're watching this right now, also the link to continue submitting questions is actually in the description of the video. We'll get started. In the recent past, there's been a degree of divisiveness and disagreement within the Student Government Senate. How would you go about getting senators to work together and collaborate, even in situations where they may have different opinions? This is for both candidates. We'll start with Jay.
The first step is just encouraging students to be involved, making sure that senators are excited to go to the Wednesday meetings. I think Jade and I would both agree that the best Senate meetings that we've had this year were the ones that ran a little long but consisted of a lot of high-quality debate. And part of that is just being a good director with Robert's Rules, making sure that Robert's Rules of Orders are followed well during a meeting, facilitating a good environment where discussion is easy to be had, and additionally, like I said earlier, just encouraging any visitors with open forum or any people outside of student government to also get involved in the Wednesday night Senate meetings.
Jaden?
Could you repeat that question real quick?
In the recent past, there has been a degree of divisiveness and disagreement within the Student Government Senate. How would you go about getting senators to work together and collaborate, even in situations where they may have different opinions?
For sure, and so it all boils down to respect again. We can go into a Senate meeting, we can have an intense debate about something, but when we walk out of that room, we're all friends. That's how I know Jay so well, is just from office hours, sitting in the student government office, and connecting just over our days, and just really making sure that we can have intense debates during Senate, but realize that we are debating the ideas and not the individual behind, speaking the idea.
This question will be for both candidates. Could you briefly explain why your campaign comparatively would be more beneficial to ISU students? Starting with Jay.
I think consistent outreach, I think consistent attendance of meetings, and just being happy to serve the role day in and day out. I think that Bryce and I each have a role in student government where it's easy to participate, and not easy in difficulty level, but we feel encouraged to show up every day and serve students.
Jaden?
So when Jacob and I sat down to hash out what our platform would be and how we can most effectively benefit the students, we came up with our 12-point platform, which is tangible things that we can guarantee can be done within the next year. We made sure that our platform was not just general empty promises, but were things that we could actually do as a small stepping stone to creating an even bigger change on campus.
This question was submitted to both candidates as well. Affordability is a pillar of both of your campaign platforms. Can you expand on your affordability goals and the background research you completed to come up with them? Jaden.
So Jacob currently sits on the student fees committee, so he is well-versed in the student fees side of things. But then our platform also goes around making sure that beyond the university and fees that our students are making sure that they know their rights as tenants when they start renting here in the Ames community, to make sure that nothing happens against them there. But then even back on like a campaign side of things, Jacob and I decided to fund privately, just making sure that we are being aware of student dollars, and that's $2,000 at the end of the year that's going to go back into the student government account that can help the most students possible.
Jay, sorry.
For student government, affecting affordability can be done in many areas. Unfortunately, the thing that people ask for the most is, no, we cannot directly lower the cost of tuition. But fortunately, within student government, we can occupy seats on the special fees. And student government, or for finance committee, just discussing those fees as well. And yeah, being a UROC senator, UROC has had many discussions regarding tenant rights, talking about having renter's guides for off-campus students as well.
This question was submitted for both candidates. What are your DEI goals for the next school year, and how will you make sure they will be implemented? Starting with Jay.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Bryce and I are proud to have on our platform that we plan to consistently outreach to multicultural groups. And we're very proud to say that within our own campaign team, we occupy almost every seat that is involved in the new Senate expansion bill. Within our campaign team alone, we have a lot of diversity, and Bryce and I will be very intentional in selecting a cabinet that is diverse in more than just race.
Jaden?
So diversity, equity, inclusion is a big part of our campaign. That Senate expansion bill that Jay mentioned, that was written by Jacob Ludwig himself. So we are in huge we just really want that to happen, just because I personally think student government's biggest flaw right now is that us as a body, we don't actually represent the population of Iowa State. And so if we can continue to bring in those views to the table, our decisions can be even better and affect every community on campus in a better way.
Yeah, you can respond.
Bryce and I are also very proud to have current Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Aliana Booman, on our campaign. And she's had just wonderful ideas for us moving forward. And Bryce and I have a lot of motivation moving forward if we're fortunate enough to serve, working with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion.
This question is for Jaden. Your platform highlights the disproportionate impact of food insecurity on marginalized communities such as international students, students of color, and members of the LGBTQIA+ community. What is your strategy for addressing this inequity on campus?
So thank you for this question, and those numbers are reflected in the report mentioned earlier tonight. And it's just a matter of outreach once again and making sure, for the Give a Swipe program, we are working with SHOP to make sure that those swipes are provided to those communities because they matter, they need to eat as well. And instead of having them have to worry about where their next meal is, they can get their assignment done knowing where their next meal is coming from.
This next question's for Jay. Over 20% of students live in residence halls. How do you feel about your performance on reaching out to them and organizations that support them?
I suppose the question doesn't specify in campaign or while we're in office.
It does not, but...
So I'll say for campaign-wise, it can be hard to reach out to residence halls. The Election Commission and the university have rules regarding how to approach residence halls campaign-wise. And I suppose if Bryce and I are in office, I think Destination Iowa State is a good way to remind students in residence halls that student government exists and that we're here for them. And just frequenting the areas, maybe not residence halls themselves, but the dining areas where those residents frequent as well.
Could you each describe any leadership positions you have had in the past that have prepared you for this position? Jay.
Yeah, I think being a senator is a great way to prepare myself for this. Sitting in on Senate meetings every week is a great way to prepare myself for this. One of the biggest jobs of the vice president is to conduct the meetings, hold the gavel, make sure that the meeting is in order. And I think, not only becoming more familiar with Robert's rules by reading and observing previous meetings, but also just actively participating in the meetings, I think is a great way to prepare myself for this. And additionally, I sit on the board of directors for the Huntington's Disease Society of America South Dakota chapter, and in that, the sole duty of that is to advocate for people that really have the cards stacked against them, and they have a big battle in front of them. So I think that role as well gives me a lot of preparation for this role.
Jaden?
So I have been very involved on campus and held leadership positions since my first semester here. Freshman year alone, I ran for Willow Hall Council, but then lost that election, but then got involved as Willow Hall's IRHA representative. I went on to serve as their the director of events for IRHA, and then ultimately that's why I'm a residence hall senator today. But I've also been involved with the SALC and in planning Sci Day with them. I've been a Cyclone aide in the past, and those experiences have just really taught me how to work with students, how to empathize with them when they're going through times of struggle, and just really make sure that they are a priority for this university and making them feel wanted and supported here.
This question's for both candidates. How do you see Iowa State's role in the Ames Climate Action Plan? Starting with Jaden.
For sure. So Jacob and I actually just went to the Student Climate Plan town hall last night. We kind of snuck in right at the end, but then we met with Director of Sustainability Elizabeth Smith last night and kind of gave a recap. And Ames's goal is to reduce their carbon emissions by 85% by 2030, and that's obviously a very ambitious goal that I support. And with when we're in school, Iowa State contributes 30,000 students, over half or almost half of the Ames community, and so we obviously have a huge role there in really making sure that we are doing that as well. Composting is a big one. When food goes to a landfill or is burned at the resource recovery plant, it puts off methane, and methane is, I don't know the exact number, but about 8 times worse than carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And so really diverting that food waste to composting, that's a super simple thing that every student at Iowa State can do.
Jay.
Could you repeat that question, please?
How do you see Iowa State's role in the Ames Climate Action Plan?
Yeah, Bryce and I are proud to belong to a campus where there's students, us included, that are very passionate about the Ames Climate Action Plan. And just working towards sustainability goals, being very intentional in the way that we select our cabinet, specifically the Director of Sustainability, and also keeping constant communication with the organizations on campus that directly advocate for that.
Members of the executive branch are in a unique position to mediate between the student body, student government, as well as the university administration. How will you operate in each of those capacities to achieve an effective student government? Jay.
Yeah, I think Bryce and I, that's one of the things we're most excited for if we're fortunate enough to take the office. Just mediating and communicating with all the people in student government, making sure that all concerns are being met, all ideas are in the room, and when someone presents an idea, it's taken legitimately and people accept that idea, and they don't have to agree with it, but at least the dialogue is going on in the room. And I just don't want anyone in student government to feel intimidated to bring up their ideas and just have them immediately be shot down or anything like that.
Jaden.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. Members of the executive branch are in a unique position to mediate between the student body, student government, as well as the university administration. How will you operate in each of those capacities to achieve an effective student government?
And so our cabinet members are appointed by Jacob and I if we were elected, and they specialize in a certain area. And so we would really want to make sure that we take what they are telling us and their projects and really just distributing that information and communicating it with administrators and with the student body.
This question's for both candidates. How do you plan to include marginalized voices in student government without tokenizing them? Starting with Jay.
I think just welcoming people with open arms, but the thing that I've been contemplating recently is how hard it can be to get in student government through an elected position. I mean, election code is confusing, it's long, there's a lot of rules, and I know with my personal experience running as senator last year and running as an executive slate this year, I mean, it takes a large chunk of my day just making sure that I'm not violating rules. And it doesn't matter what your identity is, what group you belong to, it's tough to run for office just based on the barriers of election commission and all the codes that we have to follow. So I'd encourage any student to fight that fight and to do what it takes to get into office. But Bryce and I would like to advocate for maybe a simpler campaign process so that more students feel encouraged to be a part of student government.
Jaden?
And so that's obviously something we don't want, is tokenizing certain member, or like a single person at the table at a student government meeting, for instance. And I think a lot of it is Student government does a good job of reaching, but it's time for us to be out there and really making sure that we are intentionally inviting those people to us, but then we are going out to the organizations. And so we're not relying on one single person, to tell us the views of their identity, but we're out there in the community and we go to their events, and so we better understand them as a whole collective body instead of just relying on one single person.
Jay, you can respond.
And I'll be clear that one of the downfalls of having such not a small Senate, but maybe only having one person of a specific identity being represented in Senate is their opinion doesn't reflect the opinion of the rest of the people of their community. And Bryce and I intend to outreach to various groups across campus and have that president, vice president to student conversation where they feel welcome to voice their concerns and pass that on to student government as well.
This question is for both candidates. Much like the federal government, the Vice President presides over the Senate during their meetings. How will you be able to handle the task of conducting business and discussing legislative matters while following parliamentary procedures? Jaden.
Like I said earlier, I'm well versed in parliamentary procedure. One of the ways I got really involved with IRHA was helping them implement better parliamentary procedure tactics and being able to run a meeting effectively. And if we just follow Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised, that is just the best way to keep order in the meeting room. That will promote professionalism, will promote respect among all of us, so then we can take in matters and dispose of them efficiently.
Jay.
Yeah, Robert's Rules of Order is important to make sure that every voice is heard in the room and make sure that, we're not silencing a majority. There are times where Robert's Rules gets pretty in-depth when we're in a Senate meeting, and just being able to keep a clear head and make sure that every senator knows what's going on and make sure that they know what they're voting on, making sure what the orders are, and the only way to do that is just to go to Senate meetings and attend Senate meetings and read Robert's Rules of Order and just overall becoming more familiar with them. And I think I've done that just by attending Senate meetings and in my free time studying Robert's Rules of Order.
This question's for both candidates. Student government allocates over $2 million in funds, but has rules regarding eligibility for funding called priorities and criteria. How would you alter student government's funding requirements to better reflect initiatives the student body wants to see funded? Starting with Jaden.
And so I'm pretty sure Jay's going to be able to talk about this a little better, being on Finance Committee and working through that new priorities and conditions this semester. But we really want to make sure that the reason those are in place is so that our funding goes for the most good, and we would just want to continue to promote that. But when it comes to the other matters, when students might not qualify or student organizations might not qualify under that PNC, making sure that they're I don't want to say loopholes, but there's just other manners of obtaining that financing.
Jay.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Student government allocates over $2 million in funds, but has rules regarding eligibility for funding called priorities and criteria. How would you alter student government's funding requirements to better reflect initiatives the student body wants to see funded?
So sitting on Finance Committee, we spent a lot of time last semester altering priorities and criteria. And I think the main goal of that was to be very clear about what our priorities are and being able to rely on our priorities a little bit more than we used to. And just making sure that if something doesn't fit our criteria, we're able to base it off of a priority basis. But overall, the editing of priorities and criteria this year focused more on just making it more simple for organizations to understand how the funding process works so that they feel more welcome to approach student government and ask for funding.
This question is for Jay. You mentioned your previous experience with the South Dakota Huntington's Association. Please explain how you became involved in the organization and the skills you have gained that would contribute to your role as Vice President of the student body.
Without exposing too much about myself, Huntington's disease touches my family pretty closely, and it's something I've dealt with my entire life. And I felt pretty motivated at a young age to get involved in the community, to make a difference for the people that are impacted by it. From a young age, my family hosted a charity event where we raised over $100,000 for Huntington's disease research. And I just feel a lot of passion to work for that. The experience that I've gained has been organization through coordinating fundraisers, but additionally working with middle-aged business professionals on a scale, and getting that real-world experience outside of maybe a high school or university level.
This next question is for Jaden. Sustainability is a primary point on your platform. What are Iowa State University's current greenhouse gas emissions, and what are actionable items do you plan to implement to reduce them during the upcoming year?
You can't quote me directly on what our current greenhouse gas emissions are. That information's obviously out there, but there are multiple things that we can start to do to continue to reduce that. One of the big things is expanding the electric bus fleet at SciRide. We're rolling out our first two this summer. And when you think about it, a bus might get 2 to 3 miles a gallon off diesel, but when you cram pack that bus full of 40, 50 people, that's so much better than having 40, 50 cars on the road. And then we expand that bus fleet to electric. That's going to be even better for our our environment and our CO2 emissions and lowering them.
This question's for both candidates. Could you provide an example of a time in student government that you directly assisted in seeing a project through until completion, and what did you learn from it? Jay.
Yeah, on about a weekly basis. I suppose they're smaller projects, but just assisting smaller organizations on campus to receive the funding that makes their organization run. There's a lot of organizations on campus that wouldn't be able to function without student government funding, or at least they wouldn't be able to function at the capacity that they currently do. So I'm pretty proud of those individual projects that I get to work on week in and week out. And as passionate as I felt lately about making the campaigning process easier, I wouldn't expect a bill coming from me due to conflict of interest, but I would encourage a senator that feels inclined to pursue that avenue as well.
Jaden?
I think a lot of my work in student government comes from sitting as a senator on the Rules Committee. Our main purpose is to obviously digest the different rules related bills that come through, but then also review our bylaws to make sure that our student government as a body is the most efficient as possible. I've submitted at least one bill that's passed, and there will be numerous more that come through. But then also the residence hall outreach. I know it was talked about earlier. It's actually fairly simple just to communicate with a hall council president and go to their meetings, as well as just going to IRHA, where you have every hall president sitting right there in a room every Thursday night. Just really making sure that's myself and then the 3 other residence hall centers. That's been a big deal for us, really making sure to close that gap between student government and the residence halls.
This question's for both candidates. Can you share an example of when you were a catalyst who brought groups with polarized opinions together so that all voices were heard? Beginning with Jaden.
So as an RA in Joffrey Hall, we used to be Joffrey East and Joffrey West, and so we had 2 completely different teams of RAs that worked on totally different things. But sometimes we'd have to come together for having an opening hall event, and so it's sometimes just being that mediator, because our staffs are run different ways, and so we had different expectations for ourselves, and it's really just boiling it down to how can we compromise in running this and still having an effective event.
Jay?
Yeah, I think my experience in student government, a lot of the conversations I've had might have been fairly polarized according to what side people fell on. Specifically, I'll think of the pumpkin smashing event. So a bill so small, there was a lot of division on that. And I think that, at least behind the scenes with the bill writers and the people involved in it, I encourage people to work together on that and make sure that students were able to experience a fun event, but also weighing the possible cons of it. Beyond Iowa State, I've had the privilege of being a youth counselor at a camp, and just being able to work with young people and helping them through their problems that they're experiencing at that age was another way that I was able to be a catalyst for change and just encourage them to get along and and function in a better environment.
The vice president is a role where institutional knowledge and/or help from past office holders can be very helpful. Have you spoken to current or past office holders or otherwise tried to understand the role and its workload? This is for both candidates, starting with Jay.
Yeah, before I ever decided to run, or at least officially decided to run, I made sure that I talked to the people that had previously held those positions. I wanted to make sure that it was going to be the right fit for me, and after having those conversations, I decided that it was. And I think a lot of my contacts in student government are the people that are older than me, and even outside of the student government office, I spend a lot of time with them, and just in hanging out in their apartments or whatever, we share a lot of stories of institutional knowledge that's happened over the years in student government.
Jaden?
When the idea first had approached me about running with Jacob and being vice president, I did reach out to Vice President Decker just to talk with her about the inside roles of what student government does from her perspective, and how, as vice president, just to make sure I was a good fit for that. Jacob is currently the chief of staff, and so he's had I think 3-4 years of experience with student government already. He's going to serve as a huge resource for me, this still being my first year. But then we've also already started reaching out to administrators. The new Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Vice President, she was a wonderful human being, and I was so happy to sit down with her and talk about what she has planned for this university and her new goals being here.
This question's for both candidates. Tell us about a time when your personal beliefs differed from the final decision of a group you held a leadership role in, and how did you move forward to support the group's decision even though it was not what you believed was best? Beginning with Jaden.
So I think it's important to, if you disagree, make sure your voice is out there and heard. But if the majority moves in a different direction, making sure that you are not a drag on the ultimate success of the group. I'm going to go back to my Geoffrey Hall. There's multiple times, even with just my house council, when we have an idea and there's different perspectives of that. And I might believe something and want to go a different way with the decision. But just making sure that accepting that your view is yours, but then respecting that you need to make sure you're not hindering the ability of the organization or the end goal.
Jay.
Yeah, I'll echo that. The joy of Senate is to be able to say your opinion and then realizing that you might be in the minority. And you can fight for that opinion as long as you want. And you should if you feel that you should. But at the end of the day, the majority rules, and I just want everyone that enters student government, enters Senate, enters a cabinet, that they feel encouraged to speak up their belief, but then also be willing to accept the fact that the majority spoke in that situation.
This will be the last question before we go into closing statements. What is your favorite thing about Iowa State, and what is one thing you would like to change? Starting with Jay.
My favorite thing about Iowa State would just be the culture that we currently have, and I think that striving to make it even better would make this university just the best. What I would currently change is that I think as hard as it is for a lot of people to say, there still is a divide between certain identity groups, and I think there's a lot of people that are intimidated to interact with certain groups across campus, and I just wish that wasn't there. I wish that students felt more free to interact with each other and just recognized each other for being human beings.
Jaden?
Yeah, so I love Iowa State. I'm a first-generation student, and so coming to Iowa State, it was just kind of like here you go. I didn't know much about it, but the community and the culture, like Jay said, the amount of people and organizations that were willing to take a chance on me, that were able to hear me out and really make me feel welcome and connected here. And that's ultimately why I'm up here on this podium today, is because I've had such an amazing community and experience here that I want to make sure that that is possible for every student that comes to Iowa State. And that's why I think Jacob and I devised this 12-point platform. It's just a way that Iowa State, we are doing great, but there's obviously improvement, and this is a way to continue to enhance the student experience for everyone.
We'll now move into closing statements. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to make closing statements, starting with Jaden.
Yes, so I first off want to thank everyone here, everyone at home, and Jay for joining us tonight and having this wonderful discussion about improving the student experience. Jacob and I have already started working with administrators. We've already started going out to the different clubs and organizations here on campus to make sure that even if we weren't elected, our goal and visions for this university are already rolling. When we sat down to devise this platform, we really wanted to make sure that we had tangible things that could be done and we could promise to be done by the end of the year. But those 12 things don't stop, and our administration wouldn't stop at 12 check marks. It's a good start. And so we really want to make sure we continue to do that. And that's why I'm asking humbly for your vote March 1st and 2nd to allow Jacob and I to start the ball rolling on increasing affordability, supporting the Iowa State campus community, continue to invest in our sustainability at Iowa State, and to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion here. Thank you.
Jay?
Yeah, I'm happy for a great discussion tonight. Thank you, Jaden, and Election Commission and the Daily. Thanks to the students, though, for watching the debate and being involved in their student government. Growing up, I dreamed of attending Iowa State, and honestly, oftentimes I walk around the campus or I'm sitting in the stands at a sporting event and I catch myself smiling, thinking about how much I love this university. I truly am proud to be a Cyclone, though I wouldn't have guessed that I would be running for student body vice president, and I'm honored to be here. This is what I'm passionate about. My friends and the people close to me will tell you how much attending this university means to me. And Bryce and I are excited to tackle the issues us students face if we're elected your president and vice president, and I will also humbly ask for your vote on March 1st and 2nd.
Thank you. This brings us to the end of the 2022 vice presidential debate. Thank you to both campaigns for attending tonight, and thank you to the members of the Election Commission and Iowa State Daily, as well as the MU technical staff that helped in preparation for this event. Be on the lookout for the presidential debate. That will take place 2 weeks from tomorrow, February 23rd at 7 p.m. here in the Great Hall of the MU, and it will also be live streamed on the Student Government YouTube channel. Thank you again to everyone involved. Have a great night.